you are listening to the Kinetic Man Podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm David, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living a life defined by uncommon action that is full of purpose, adventure, and meaningful relationships. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours, and together achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to leave the potential life behind and become kinetic men. Kinetic Men retreats. If you've not been to one, we're on our 4th iteration, September 27 through 29, Empire, Colorado. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You will come there, one man, you'll leave a changed man. You're going to be surrounded by a group of ninja individuals. You're going to eat. We're going to keep you active so that you don't get too fat because the food is amazing. You're going to be spoiled with just the level of the retreat. But I'll tell you, it is such a life-changing event that you are absolutely missing out if you do not participate in one of these events. So come join us. Go to thekineticman.com. Sign up. Be different. Be better. Do something. Get it.
My man. So I'm not going to get into details, but you have different parts of your body that are potentially swollen, have been, you had a very eventful weekend with
I did.
some doctor's visits, and now half of your face is numb, which almost worth watching this on YouTube instead of listening to, just to see your half like smile. But I will say,
do I look more handsome when I smile like this? It's like,
no, I think you'd look more handsome if I had those numbing agents in my eyeballs, maybe. and maybe that would make you more handsome. But I think it's awesome, though, that the dentist, this is a completely foreign topic to me, and I'm looking forward to my first civilian dental visit. But you said they numbed you to do a deep clean, which my only experience for the last 25 years with academy and military is to grab the dental chair. And to all the dental folks out there in the military, I love you guys, and this is not a slam in any way, but it's just a different experience because I get up from that chair and typically it's a puddle of sweat and there's some pain and maybe a little tears, and that's and also my fault, right? If I potentially had cleaner teeth or whatever, that it wouldn't be that way, but you got your face numb so that you could do that scraping in complete comfort.
Yeah, dude. I mean, civilian dentist experience, 1,000 times better than my military dental experiences. My dentist now has a massaging chair, so I have a little back massage while I'm getting cleaned. There's a TV on the ceiling, so I can watch, a National Geographic show while I'm getting cleaned, and there's candles and it smells good, and like it's just an overall like not terrible experience. Like
that's great.
Yeah. That's great. But yes, my full right side of my mouth is numb right now. And what's also interesting is I had jaw surgery and right arch surgery when I was at the Naval Academy, and so like all the nerve endings are like jacked up on that side, so it's like even like highlighted more. So
nice.
Yeah, so like my eyelids are all like twitching right now, and yeah, it's good. It's good timing for recording a podcast.
That's great. No, I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we've talked about intentionality quite a bit, but there are 3 things that I'm going to start here with a slight monologue, but there are 3 things that really, as I was thinking about this podcast, 3 things that popped out. First, I had an indication this weekend that something may have been awry or amiss with you, because I called you a couple times, and the intent of calling you this weekend was I spent a lot of time in the garden, and I spent a lot of time outside, like getting our yard, just moving piles of mulch, all this kind of stuff. But I was listening to a lot of podcasts while I was doing that, and it hit me that 2 of the most impactful podcasts that I've ever listened to were 2 that you put me onto. The first one, years ago in Italy, I wasn't even, actually you put me on a podcasting. Didn't even listen to podcasts, but years ago when we were stationed together, you introduced me to Rick Warren's podcast. which has been absolutely formative for me the last, whatever, 5-6 years, however long it's been. And so that was very, very impactful for me. And then you put me on to John Mark Comer, who I absolutely love his podcast, because the way that he, both these men, pastors, but the way that they present the word of God is Rick Warren has a beautiful gift to really, we call it what it is, to dumb it down, to make it very relatable. And he does an amazing job and very challenging. And I absolutely love him. And then John Mark Comer, he appeals to me because, one, he's funny, he's dry, sarcastic. I love it. But he also brings in a lot of different reading, very well read individual. And he brings in a lot of different thoughts and ideas as he formulates his message surrounding Jesus and the way that you can practically live your life, but it's very Jesus focused. He talks about being an apprentice of Jesus quite a bit, and just the idea behind that, and his definition of words, and the way he got to the apprentice of Jesus, the apprenticeship of Jesus, all very powerful things, and very, very appealing to me because I just love that process. But as I was listening to these podcasts, it hit me. I was like, man, I've been very intentional with who I hang out with. Not always in my life, but you are someone that I very specifically was intentional with and have been intentional with for years. And you introduced me to two things, and this is just one of many things that have been life-changing to me. So I called you to express my gratitude, and you didn't answer. And I'm like, huh, that's weird that you didn't even respond. Which you happen to be in the ER getting taken care of, but they also, the intentionality of something we recently were challenged with this Thankful Thursdays, and really just being extremely intentional with our gratitudes is just another outpouring of that, right? Of our friendship, of the things we're exposed to, of the people that we surround ourselves with. And that came from Brandon Jones. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to take all these things and be very intentional and reach out to Stu and just tell him very specifically, hey, thank you. You don't probably know, but you exposed me to some things that have been very, very transformative to my life beyond our friendship, additional things, right? These podcasts in particular. And so I called to thank you, but you were busy in that moment. And so the first point of intentionality is who do you hang out with, and how does that impact your life, right? And are you choosing the circles that you participate in, and are you choosing them from a frame of mind of like, hey, no kidding, I am being extremely intentional with who I surround myself with. And I was listening to an author, a coach. He said, hey, if you are the most fascinating, interesting person in your group, or in the folks you hang out with, you're in the wrong group, right? Like if you're the most interesting person, like, get a new group, because you're not growing. And so that was that who you hang out with was the first point of intentionality. I just wanted to touch on quickly. Do you have anything? I don't want to be complete monologue here.
No, I'm just I'm trying to hold back some emotions, and you're gonna make me cry like right at the very beginning of this podcast. Was that your intention? Were you just trying to pour into to make me cry on a
Every
podcast?
podcast. Yeah, every podcast.
Mm.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's no. Thank you. Right back at you, my man. I mean, I think just having you in my life has incredibly made me a better person, just in all areas of my life. And the men that we surround ourselves with now, we haven't always been intentional about, surrounding ourselves with people that are continually lifting us up and helping us grow. But now, like, we do that every single week, and well, every day, honestly, right? And we are intentional about inviting people into our lives that we know are going to be life giving, and it's been a complete game changer for me.
100%, man. Yeah, and here's the thing: like, we talk about, oh, we're surrounded by ninjas. You guys are amazing. Like, I cannot, like, those are not just words, right? I mean, these dudes are absolutely phenomenal men, and the thing is, we can all do it. Like that's what's crazy about it. We can all do it. We don't have to be living in this, surrounding ourselves with this negativity or whatever it is, the status quo, the what's comfortable. You don't have to do that. And especially when you choose to be like, you know what, if I am like, if I'm like the primary whatever part of my group, or if I'm not being challenged, if I'm the most interesting guy, which has not been a problem for me ever, but if I'm the most interesting guy, like if you choose to refuse to be in that situation, like it just opens up a whole different world. It's magical. um Second point is how you show up. And this was interesting. Someone sent me from the group, someone sent me a quote, and it was a very special moment. It was beautiful, and I loved it. And I'll read it to you here in a sec, but it was what became very interesting is, and I was considering posting it, but oftentimes I'll before I push something out, especially quotes, like I will dive into them, like do the research on the background and understand like what, where this quote came from, who said it, who, and because I think a lot of times when you post, if you're not thoughtful in what you post, you're representing the things that you put out there are a representative of who you are, right? It represents what you're consuming. It represents, potentially inadvertently or not, like whether you intend it to be or not. So this would happen to be a quote attributed to Buddhist Zen. And so it kind of caught my attention because I'm like, I don't, Buddhist Zen is not something that, there are a lot of elements that are beautiful in Buddhism, and there are a lot of things that you can learn from. And that's kind of to this point as well, of how you show up, and to include from an educational perspective, right? How do you challenge the things that come into your mind? How do you test, what are you doing about these things? So again, Buddhism, not a religion that I follow, not something that I'm, prescribed to at all, but at the same time, I recognize that there is a lot of really good things that you can embrace. There are a lot of good, like, and I don't think meditation is a Buddhist thing, right? Like meditation is something that, that is not a single religion, but a lot of people attribute, meditation to monks and all that kind of stuff. Was there something we can learn from that? 100%. Like there's a lot of beautiful stuff in the practice of monks who, if they're Buddhist in nature, who have this amazing skill of meditation, and they take it to another level. Can you learn from that? Absolutely. And apply it to your life? 100%. Like, so that's what I really appreciate, like John Mark Comer. A lot of stuff that he brings in is to enhance his faith with Jesus, but there's some really good lessons there. So point being, this quote, and I'll read it. As a matter of fact, as I did the research, is not a Buddhist quote. It's not a quote from Zen. And then as you look at it, there's another misattribution of this quote to another author, right? And so it was very fascinating to me as I started looking at this quote. I'm like, wow, this has been like a lot of quotes misattributed for the last, I don't know, almost 100 years at this point. And so I think I got to the bottom of who said it. But again, the whole point, the exercise was such a great deep dive for me, because again, it just is that process of challenging the things you let in. And before you turn around and spit it out, you should challenge it, right? Like you should be like, oh, I wonder if this really is a Buddhist quote. Well, as a matter of fact, it's not. It's not. But here's the quote. It's a master in the art of living draws no sharp distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing, and leaves others to determine whether he is working or playing. To himself, he always seems to be doing enough for him that he does it well. And I love the quote because, one, it was very special. Someone sent it, but this individual is recognizing that, the things that you and I do, we love what we do. We love what we do, and we've built it. And so there's a level of intentionality there that is undeniable. And so his perception was, man, I see you guys doing this stuff, and it's amazing to me, this individual, to be able to see that, like, it's hard to distinct, to make the distinction between your work and your play, what you enjoy, all these different things. And the actual, they believe the actual author of this is a guy named Lawrence Purcell Jacks, who wrote a book in like 1930. And this was a quote in his book. Again, an author that I don't agree with his religious view on life, but an amazing quote, right? There's something to learn from that. And so the point to this little this part of intentionality is like, what are you doing to, no kidding, filter and to learn from and to dive into and to to actually process and digest and add value to the things that are coming in? Are you simply a sound, like, are you a microphone, like someone says something in your ear and you just spout it out and that's your truth? Or are you diving in and showing up in a way that ideally adds value, context, depth to your relationships?
Yeah, I love it, man. It's it's funny that we're talking about this concept of intentionality and really just I think it's really important to learn, if anything, learn the other side, right? Like learn the other side of your opinion. And I was actually talking to a future mastermind member this morning, and one of his questions about the mastermind is like, "Hey, I see this area that you guys focus on as faith, and I've seen your posts, and I know you guys are Christians." He's like, you know, "I'm still kind of figuring this whole section of my life out, and is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, absolutely. Like, we're Christians, we're believers, and we're open to that. But that doesn't mean that someone can't come in and not have that same belief, not have that same faith. Everyone has faith in something, and we just dive into that. Like, you define what that is, and it's good for us to hear other opinions, right? It's good for us to see a different side and take all of these sides and take all of these opinions, and then from there formulate our own, and not just be the parrot, right? Not just be the parrot that is hearing from Fox News or from CNN or from, you know, uh, the pastor that our parents forced us to go to when we were younger, or whatever, right? Whatever that is, because we've talked in the past, like a lot of our belief systems come from our parents or how we grew up, our teachers, our coaches. But at some point, we have to formulate our own opinions. And so taking all these sides and being intentional about that and actually seeking it out, right? And not just saying I believe this because this is how I grew up. This is how I am. We've done another podcast about that. Like, that's just how I am. No, like, be intentional, learn some other sides, and formulate your own opinion on things. It's really good, man. I love it.
Yeah, and I would highly encourage on it's called I think it's just called John Mark Comer Teachings Podcast. And I'm making my way through. We had kind of gone through some different ones that we recommended. I'm like, I'm just gonna go to the beginning, and in the beginning, it's really good. And it actually makes more sense if you go from the beginning, because then it gets into the practices later, and we kind of jumped into some practices, but it started with this idea, this 3-point thing: be with Jesus, be like Jesus, and do what he did. And it's interesting because a lot of things he highlights in there, in the be like him and do what he did, and to your point, is like, who did he hang out with and what did he do, right? So like, Jesus was all about going and breaking bread, having meals with mostly sinners, right? He had his group of people, but how did he get that group? Well, one was a tax collector, one was a zealot. Like, those two must have hated each other. I can't even imagine what dinner was like with those two at the same table. There was these different, this group of almost misfits, right? That you look at them and you're like, man, how did these people come together? And that was a special thing about Jesus, that he could bring them together. But we talked about this the other day, Stu. Most rabbis, not most, no rabbis had a following of women, right? Like, that was radical. He did. He had this following of women. Like, it just was, he just was such an intriguing, special human being and God. And that's one of the things that John Mark talks about. It. He's like, but you cannot discredit all the things he did by just saying, oh, well, but he was God. So he could, no, he was a man. He was a man from Nazareth who lived on this planet and experienced the things that we experience. He just was perfect, and he was much better than we were. And there's aspects that we could learn to doing what he did. And so when you talk about this idea of who you're around and what you do, well, if you are a man of faith or man or woman of faith, then that's the model. And he also talks about some of the stats, like 70% of folks claim that they're Christian, and then like 8%. I can't remember the exact stats he threw out there, but it's like 8% are actually living a life that is described by the Bible, and the things that you do and the way that you proclaim your faith. And so it's just a really interesting thing. Again, it's digging deeper, right? It's no kidding. How do you show up? It's the actions. It's the intentionality. Like, what are you doing? And can you base that into something that you've, again, have some profound thought? There's some depth there, and it goes beyond just, oh, that's just who I am, right? Or whatever your reasoning is, to potentially be somewhat shallow. And I think there's an important distinction there.
Yeah, man. One more point before you get hit on the next intentionality is that I found some notes that I had taken when I read the book Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about our value system and how we define our value system based on our experiences. And at some point, we have to do our own life audit, and we have to curate our own values by filtering out all of everybody else's, he calls them OBOs, opinions, expectations, and obligations. We have to filter all that stuff out because there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of other people's opinions, other people's expectations, other people's obligations that are put on you that, maybe you've said yes to. You got to filter all that stuff out, and you have to come up with your own value system, curate your own values based on the qualities that you want to have in your life. So I think that's really important to surround yourself with a diverse group of people that can help you in that.
Yeah, and if you want to change, that audit you mentioned just brought up one of the actions, the actions that John Mark highlighted, and it was to take and we talk about this as well in the mastermind, but to take a habit audit. Like, no kidding, just set it, have a little notebook or whatever, take a habit audit. No kidding, put down what you do as habits. And if you want to change, then you take your habit audit, your habit audit, and you identify the thing you want to change. And then, he goes into the psychology, which is why I love him. He goes into the psychology of habit change. And typically the most effective way to do it is replacing. Right. So you replace a habit with another habit, because just to be like, oh, I'm just not going to do that, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. Usually you do it more because you're so focused on not doing something that you end up doing it more. And so it's not about just stopping, it's about replacing. And so whether that's, I want to stop, watching TV at night because I wake up, I stay up late, wake up too late in the evening, whatever, you replace it with something else. Like, okay, in that time, I'm maybe going to read a book or do something, right? Something that you determine is more useful for your time and your effort, and then just see what happens. And for him, it was radically life-changing. For us, it's been life-changing. And so there's just that element of, how are you showing up? What are you challenging? What are the filters that you apply? Are you applying any filters between, your ears and your mouth? Ideally, it goes through a brain. That brain then applies some form of things that, that you're doing, and then out comes a product that you have distilled and you have actually grown from, and there's some importance in that. This last point I want to talk about, and we're going to do another podcast to go like dive deep into the intentionality of what you're doing, but there is this element that we touched on just now, right? And it's no kidding, like, what are you actually doing, right? What is the outpouring of the intentionality of, whether it's you're reading, you're studying, you're doing these things? What is, no kidding, the outpouring of that? And we've talked about it a couple of times, that this idea of a checklist of books. I want to read 10,000 books this year. Like, that's awesome. I love it. That's great. I think reading is so important. You talk about Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk, right? Like, he's not a Christian. He's not right. He's not of the same faith or whatever. But dude, that book, amazing, incredible book, right? It had so much stuff. I learned so much from that book. I learned so much from his podcast.
Yeah,
And
man.
because what's incredible about it is there's a lot of there's the thought, the depth, the background, whatever, but then there's, what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, what are you, no kidding, are you picking up books, even the intentionality of your thought in a book? Like, when you pick up a book, is it just to get through another book, or is it to, no kidding, be like, what can I learn from and some books take a long time for me to get through because I'm just like reading the same section over and over. And even like, when you talk about the Bible, it's one of the things that I recently was listening to is there's different ways to read, and there's something to be said for the checklist of like getting through the Bible in a year, and like this massive chunks. I say massive chunks, these bigger chunks of digesting information and taking them in. And there's a benefit to that discipline. There's a benefit to those action items, but there's also a beautiful, huge benefit in digging deep, right? And rereading these things. Like, what does this really mean to me? What is this? How does this impact me? How is it truly impacting me? Am I really digesting it? Is this truly powerful in my life? But then what is the outpouring of that? What are the actions that I'm doing? Love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Man, that's such a beautiful word. And Jesus said those are the most powerful, those are the two most important commandments of the Bible. What does that mean? What does it mean to love my neighbor? Like, no kidding. It's not like, oh, well, this dude or dudette sitting next to me in church that shares all the beliefs I share, and we're very no, dude. Like, your neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Like, do you know your neighbor? And if you don't know them, do you love them? Like, how are you loving them? And when their kids come and play in your yard, what's your initial reaction? Is it, get out of my yard, you're killing my grass, and the HOA is going to come get me? Or is it, man, how do I love on these kids? Because I've been on both sides of that. Within 5 minutes too, this weekend, some random kids showed up in my yard, and I was like, and they're older kids, and I always think, oh, these older kids are going to bully my little kids, but they're nice kids. They're playing with my kids, and I'm like, but my initial reaction, like, who are these kids, and why are they coming in my backyard like to get a ball? Like, I don't even know you. You don't even acknowledge me. Like, hey, good morning, or anything, right? But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of neighbors super grumpy like that. Who are these kids? Let me go talk to them. Like, what do they, where'd they got? Like, I've never seen these kids before in my life, but nice kids. And they start playing with my kids, and they're showing them they're bigger kids and they're, whatever. But I'm also an influence on them. And so, like, how are you showing up, and how are these things truly being applied? I mean, that challenges me. It challenges me to actually go to my neighbors. It's easy to go to my buddies' houses and have a beer and have some fun, right? Hang out and pour into them. But even yesterday, dude, one of my neighbors that we're coaching together, I was like, man, this is really important to me that he knows how grateful I am that he chose to coach football with me with our boys, because it makes it so much more fun for me and the boys, and it's a great experience. So, like, I should go tell him that. Why should I hesitate to tell him that? And so I went over there and told him, right? But it's not because I'm a good dude. And it's not because it's my heart is naturally inclined or bent towards that. It's because I've been challenged by Thankful Thursdays. It's been challenged by John Mark Comer. And literally, I'm listening to this podcast about loving your neighbor. It's these things that are coming in, and I have to do something about it. And so you go to a place of potentially discomfort, whatever, but the blessing and the gift in that is so beautiful, right? The intentionality of doing something with all this knowledge that we have coming in our head and our phone and our books and all this stuff. Do something, right? Like, it's what are, no kidding, the outpouring of all this effort and all this information and all this stuff. And then we just sit on it.
Well, that's the definition of being a kinetic man, right? We're gonna get after it. We're gonna take action.
Yep.
It's interesting you brought up the idea of loving your neighbor. I'm actually um, going through a Bible study right now through the book of John through my church, and this morning, just like you said, like I dove deep into John 13, 12 through 17. It's five sentences. And it's the section where he's washing the disciples' feet before he, you know, goes off to be hung on the cross. And um, like this is the Messiah, the Lord, right? And he's serving his disciples, his students, by washing their feet. And um, you know, in my study here, it says to list out areas of your life where you could follow him and be a servant. And one of the things I put down is in my neighborhood, to my neighbors. We live in a cul-de-sac. I know all my neighbors, but could I serve them better? Could I love my neighbor more like I love myself? I absolutely could. And it's a gap that I've identified in my life, that I've never been like one of those, like, I mean, you're much more of a socialite than I am. And I have identified a gap in my life where I want to be more intentional about being, having hospitality in our home, being inviting, having a house where people come and break bread and do meals, and our neighbors like hang out, and like we have barbecues together, and our kids play, and like we have bonfires in the backyard, and all these things. I have these visions of that. And so like that's going to take me being intentional about loving my neighbor and inviting them and being the house that just takes the action and just does it, right? And so all of these conversations, all these book readings, all these challenges that we have inside our mastermind group, like it's, again, life-giving, man. Like it's changing my life for the better, to force me to take action and be better, be a better neighbor.
Yeah, man, it's super powerful, and one of the things I like to highlight in a lot of the things that I read specifically from the Bible is, dude, it doesn't matter your faith background. Like the idea of a servant leader, like who hates that? The idea of somebody who, and whatever your belief in Jesus is or isn't, like one thing you have to acknowledge is very charismatic leader who had a lot of followers. That I don't. I mean, there are people that are going to argue that, fine. But most people, no matter where you sit on your faith, acknowledge that is that was true, right? That was captured via historical documents, not just the Bible. Outside of the Bible, other historical documents capture those same truths. And for that individual to humble himself and wash the feet of those who followed him, like the idea of doing that is very practical, but it is also a display of leadership that is incredibly beautiful and powerful. And so it doesn't really matter what you believe. I think we all can agree that is a very high level of intentionality and of being self-sacrificing and pouring into others, right? And so what does that look like? Like you said, in your community, maybe you just bust the Traeger out and put it in the garage. In the driveway. And it's like a Saturday morning, like, hey, everybody, or the text goes out Friday, hey, tomorrow, lunch, everybody, like just bring whatever. We're throwing it on the Traeger and we're just hanging out. Right. I just want to, and if you're like, want to go, not you, I'm not telling you anything that you should do. I'm having this picture of what I want to do in my neighborhood too. But even a step further is to be like, hey, I'm doing this because I want to know you guys better. I want to serve you. Quite frankly, I want to love you. And I've talked to some of my neighbors about wanting to be an influence in their children's lives. Like I've gone to them and said, hey, I want to be a man that your kids look up to and feel safe around, and feel safe to talk to. I want to be seen as an individual that it's a safe place for them. And that is, dude, I'll tell you, we joke all the time. Dude, these kids are in and out of my house now. Like the parents come over, they're like, I keep telling my kids they cannot come in your house without knocking. And I'm like, dude, It's awesome, man. I'll start closing the door when I go to the bathroom. But it's I love like the comfortability. These kids just come into my house, dude, and they like they know where the cups are. Like these are kindergartners. They know where the cups are. They open the drawers, they pull cups out, get water. And I make them say hi. I might, at a minimum, I'm like, hey, dude, if you're gonna come in my house, like you're gonna say hi to me.
At least say hi.
At least say hi to me. Like, don't just come in and say hi. Let's talk. And they're like, hi, and then they're out, right? Trampoline and through my house.
Yeah.
And I tell the parents because it makes me laugh. Like one of the kids last night, I call it, what did I call it? LL Logan, or I forgot. I made a one of the neighbor boys, but I basically made an acronym for things that Logan said today that make me laugh. But he's like, hey, can you call my mom and just ask her if I can stay over here for dinner? He's a little kindergartner, dude. I'm like, I don't think your mom's gonna be down with that. But the point is to express openly through action is most important, way more important than words, that we truly desire to be these men, and we truly desire, and it's not about us. It's, I want to truly pour into and love my neighbors as myself, right? I want to love my neighbors with all my mind, heart, and soul, and really pour in, because that's where like magic happens in those moments too. And it's so intentional. You have to be, as much of a people person as I am, and I like hanging out with people, like it's not a natural thing. Like sometimes I can get a little bit like, I don't know, greedy, or consider things like, well, what's that going to cost me? This, that, how am I, like things that are just very much more superficial. And then when I do it, like I'm like, why did I even think about that? Like, I mean, it was freaking hamburgers. Like it didn't cost me anything, and the benefit far outweighed it. And so, we all have challenges, but to identify those gaps, like you said, and to do something about them, like that is the most, we all have gaps, huge gaps. And someone like me, gaps may be more of those disciplines that are more isolated and alone, and there's depth there, not always being with people, right? There's disciplines that align with that. And so it's not that you just gravitate to those strengths and to those things. It's like, try to do it all. Try to get better at all of it, right? And so, yeah, man, there's a lot of power in that. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I think just the power of intentionality can really, really, really change your life. I think so many people go through life just living on autopilot, and they just get into this cycle of going to work and coming home, and just on this never ending just hamster wheel of life. And it's just not a good way to live, man.
Oh man, step off of it. Step off of that wheel and check it out. And so, dude, yeah, so 3 just very specific takeaways. We chatted about intentionality and who are you hanging out with. Like, take an audit of all these things. Who are you hanging out with? Is it life-giving, or is it taking from? So who are those people? What's the influence they have? And write it down, right? And then from that list, there's an amazing other thing you can do. All these things kind of build. You could take that list, and you now also have a list of people that you could potentially reach out to and just say thank you, right?
Yeah.
Express gratitude for them. There's nothing more powerful in just the building your own happiness as reaching out and expressing your gratitude for other people. Like it's just, I mean, it's science. It really, they've studied it a number of times, and the expression of gratitude has a direct correlation to your level of happiness, and it just is what it is. We're built that way. The second is how you showing up. Like, what are you from not only how you're showing up, in your house and at work and all that, but like to reading books. Like, how are you showing up to what you let in, to how it comes into what you consume, your level of questioning, and are you challenging these different things? And I'll tell you, I would highly encourage anybody who does any posting, talking, anything, if you use quotes in your life, look them up. Like, before you spit them out, do just a little bit of research. I'll tell you, it's beautiful to get depth of who said it, to understand why they said it, and to even know if they actually said it. If you think the person that you're going to attribute the quote to said what they actually said or didn't say, and then just to have a little bit of depth of that, because it reflects on you. And there are a lot of people that are going to look it up and then be like, oh man, that doesn't make any sense. Not that it's about the other people, but it's more enriching for you to add depth to that. And then what do you know, kidding? Like, what's the outpouring? Like, look at that, assess it, take an audit of what the outpouring is. If you're just reading a bunch of books, if you read 1,000 books last year and you didn't action any of them, like, then what's the point? What's the point to that? So take an audit of your actions and identify those gaps and do something about them. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is very selfish too, right? Like, it brings us joy. It brings me joy when I'm able to serve others, and there's a selfish aspect to that. But I think it's a beautifully selfish aspect of that. If I'm gonna be selfish in anything, I hope it's that I serve so abundantly because it makes me feel great. I hope that's my selfishness.
Yeah, man. I think Jesus could probably claim that that's how he lived his life.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. He was a pretty rad dude.
Pretty rad.
I love it, man. This is a great topic. I mean, we could probably go for a couple more hours just hitting all of these aspects of our life that we've become really intentional in. Honestly, like every single part of the kinetic life circle that we dive into, we're taking action on and creating, these daily habits and putting things on the calendar, actually like doing this stuff, and then surround ourselves with people that are going to hold us accountable to that. And, it's so interesting. Like you hear about something that, one of the other kinetic men are doing, and you're like, oh, dang, that's awesome. I want to do that too. Or I'm going to step it up and go a little bit higher on that. Like I'm going to go a level up on you. And then you get into this, like, almost like a one-up thing. Like it's it's pretty awesome, man. But hey, we're coming better through it. So
every day.
And here's the cool part. We're starting another group in September. House 3 of the mastermind is starting, and the application is up online right now. So if this is something that sounds awesome, which it is, and you want to be a part of something like that, you should go and apply. There's only 15 spots available. Applications have already started coming in. And there is a selection process to this. So we are looking for men who are going to take action and be freaking ninjas. And if that sounds like you, then you should come be a part of it.
And if it doesn't sound awesome, check yourself
before you wreck yourself. Storehouse.
Awesome, man. Love it.
What's the website? Well, storehouse310.com/mastermind. That's changing soon, but we'll let you know when that happens. But for now, storehouse310.com backsmash
that junk.
There's a big join now button. Hit that thing and apply and backsmash it.
Backsmash it. Awesome. Good chat. Love you, brother.
You, man. Stop making me cry.
Look with your face. Look with your face.
Thanks.
See ya.
Man, we have exciting news. We're opening up the next house of the Kinetic Man Mastermind. I tell you, it's the most important hour of the week that I attend. I change every single week for the better to become the best husband, the best father, the best friend, and the best leader in our community. This is a time that you can choose to make a major impact in your life. Go to thekineticman.com and sign up. It's an application. It is exclusive. We are looking for the right man to take action and join us to be the hero of their journey. Come join us, thekineticman.com. Do it.
Thank you for listening to the Kinetic Man podcast. If you are growth-minded, community-focused, and willing to take uncommon action to redefine success and live an abundant life, visit our website at www thekineticman.com to see all the ways we could connect.
And on our website, you can find more information on everything we're doing, like joining our meetup page to get the details on our webinars and our local Thursday gatherings here in Colorado. From our site, you can also find more information on and sign up for the next Kinetic Man retreat and the next house of our mastermind group. Finally, we always appreciate your love and support. Please share this episode and go rate us on your favorite podcast player of choice.
Thank you again. Now go take and common action.